Today we're sitting down with Jason Walton, who is, and I'm very excited to have him on. He's done a lot in his career. So I'll give a quick bio on Jason. Jason is the founder of Moxie Pest Control, a national pest control company with over 30 offices across the country. In addition to Moxie, Jason has founded 4 other pest control brands, all of which are known for exceptional pest control results and premium customer service. Jason is also the host of the Jason Walton Live It podcast, a show focused on helping you become the best version of yourself. So welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, glad we could connect and do this. I've heard a lot of good things about you. I've listened to you on Jamie Rex's podcast, and I know you've got your own thing going. So I'm excited to dive into this. Well, the first thing I usually ask my guests, Jason, is to talk a little bit about your upbringing. So childhood years or teenage years, maybe parents or influences that inspired you or maybe molded you to kind of be who you are today.
Well, that's a lot. I could go for an hour and a half right there. So do you want me to start with my childhood, where I'm from?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. So I was born in Long Beach, California. Okay. I think I moved to Monticello, Utah when I was roughly 2 years old. Okay. So Monticello is southeastern Utah. It's in we call it the Four Corners area, and it's south of Moab.
Got it.
And my father was raised in Monticello. My grandfather was raised in Monticello. And my great-grandfather was actually a pioneer.
Nice.
And his father, my great-great-grandfather, is one of the 6 founding families of Monticello. So we've been in that area for a while.
Wow.
And the reason it always goes back to my great-grandfather is there's just people were having children very late in life.
Sure.
And so my great-grandfather was literally a little boy when Monticello and some of the pioneer settling of southern Utah was happening.
Got it.
When I was 10, we moved to Southern California, and I went to South Torrance High School and lived actually with my grandparents for the majority of the time while we were there. And sometimes we even had an aunt and uncle that would live with us too. It was a crowded house.
Okay.
And that was very formative for me.
Sure.
Influential. And my senior year of high school, I moved to a suburb of Dallas, Texas, called Plano, Texas.
Okay. Yeah, I know Plano.
Yeah.
Great area.
And then I went to BYU. I was originally studying English. I started into doing summer sales, right? Like literally I went on a mission to Macon, Georgia for the LDS Church. And then I got married on May 1st. And my honeymoon was driving to my area to sell pest control for my first year. Nice. Now we were talking in the early 90s, so this is before the industry as we know it now. Mm-hmm. I literally couldn't find anyone amongst my friends who had ever done any type of summer sales at BYU. That's how long ago this was.
Yeah, it was revolutionary at the time.
It was revolutionary, yes. And so anyway, so I switched my degree to accounting.
Okay.
Got an accounting degree, and that brings me up to entrepreneurship.
So we're fellow accounting brothers then.
That's right.
I studied accounting as well. Sounds like neither of us really went that route, but would love to, let's talk about college for a second. So you went to BYU. Why did you decide to why'd you go out and sell pest and balancing that with getting a degree in accounting? I know from my experience in the accounting program, it's very structured. Yeah. And they like to, they want to push internships at Big Four accounting firms and, funnel you in that route. So you kind of went against the grain a little bit. Talk about your experience at BYU and your mindset.
So many things to say. Do we talk about the accounting and why I chose it, or should we start with like what about college would you like me to?
Yeah, I guess in general, what was your mindset coming into school? What were you trying to get out of college?
Yeah,
and then what made you go the route you went?
So I definitely did not want to be an entrepreneur.
Okay,
straight up. So when I was in college, I wanted to either get an MBA or a law degree.
Okay.
And in my head, I probably had them in that order at the early stages of college. Mm-hmm. As I got As I drew closer to the later stage of college, I wanted to get a master's in business administration.
Okay.
And I thought English was a better degree. Plus, I like English. I enjoy it. And it's easier than accounting.
Yeah.
To me. My wife is ahead of me in school. And so she actually was already studying accounting, wanted an accounting degree. And when I would interact with her and people in her program, I realized that I had a very large blind spot to all things that were finance related.
Okay.
And I thought, boy, I really think I should get an accounting degree. One of the main things that held me up was that I was paying attention to what the best business schools, who they were admitting into their programs, the Stanfords, the Harvards, and it didn't look like they liked admitting people with accounting degrees. But I dug deeper into that, and I don't think it's the accounting degree that they didn't like. I think it's the work experience that they didn't like. So I'm opinionated on this. I think that whether we're as employers or learning institutions, people are trying to hedge the risk. And so I had a theory that any business school was trying to hedge the risk, period. So if you're Harvard or Stanford, what's your risk? I believe that first, their product is to have top-level business executives. And perhaps Harvard, maybe at my time, had a specialization in strategy. And so if you're thinking, who are we going to admit that in the future could be some of the top business executives in the country or in the world, how do we hedge our risk for that? And so to say, well, I have an accounting degree. Okay, well, we could teach you all of that.
Yeah.
Better than how it's been taught to you, probably. Right? So you hedged no risk, like almost none.
Sure.
Oh, well, I went and worked for a Big Six or Big Four or whatever it is now, accounting firm.
Yeah.
So what do executives, what skill sets set them apart? So probably thinking strategically. How did you hedge the risk in going and work for an accounting program that you can think strategically?
Right.
I would argue none.
Yeah.
Right. Next thing is I can come up with a vision. This gets into thinking strategically, and then I can marshal human and capital resources to execute that vision. Meaning, hey, I have this idea of how to start a business or change a business or a new strategy for a business. And so here, according to, I dove into the spreadsheets. This is the capital we're going to need. Here's where we're going to get it. Now we're going to sell this vision not only to people with the capital, but we're now going to sell the vision to people that we're going to hire and try to attract talented people. And then we're going to put together training programs of how to develop and harness human resources, all being brought to bear to achieve this vision.
Yeah.
One, have the vision. And then two, can you attract accurately the right amount of capital resources? And then can you do the human part? How does working in an accounting firm hedge your risk to be able to do that? You're not thinking strategically, at least the way where Harvard is going to say, oh, boy, look at the audit he did.
Right.
Or she did, right? That's the type of person we want that definitely could go run an organization of 25,000 people, you know? So to the extent that you can show that people, the other thing is like, why are letters of recommendation so important? I think they should be even more important for business schools, maybe than they already are. Because if you can get a letter from somebody who is already a world-class leader and who understands what it takes, who can say, yeah, this person, I think this person has what it takes. I worked with this young woman or young man, and here are the skills that they demonstrated and showed that I thought were rare from my 20 years of industry experience. If I'm Harvard and I'm trying to hedge my risk, I'm going to put a lot of weight into that.
Sure.
A lot of weight.
Yeah.
Personally.
Right.
But what do you get from the GPA? Well, either they're really smart or hardworking or a combination. What do you get from the GMAT score? Almost nothing, right? What do you get from other placement tests? Maybe some IQ related things, but it doesn't get into your ability to actually solve problems, think strategically, and be right. And so I thought if I get a degree in accounting, then just don't go get accounting related work experience. What prevents you from getting an accounting degree and then going and working for a consulting company? Well, the consulting company is what prevents you, right? Yeah. Meaning if they won't hire you. So when I was graduating from college at BYU, I did go interview for other jobs that were outside of accounting. So I went over to the econ. I even went to the MBAs and got into their job board and sat for interviews. In my opinion, the best job offers that I got by far were those jobs.
Got it.
And some of them were really hard not to take. I mean, one of the hardest job that I didn't accept was this, I won't use his name, but really sharp person I have a lot of respect for, that had a Stanford MBA, and he went and started a company that he'd kind of done the work experience or came up with the vision of it while I was at Stanford. And it was in the golf industry. And he wrote a thesis about it, or a business plan, and ended up getting funded. My memory is it got funded by a Stanford alum, and it was a very successful business. That's probably, if I had took one other job, that's the job I would have probably taken, because I thought it was the best road to probably get to Stanford. It was a case study that was taught to the Stanford Business School students. And anyway, when I decided to go do pest control, to start a pest control company instead of that, to me, it was work experience in the beginning. Even when I started my first pest control company, it's called Mayday Pest Control. I started it in Dallas and I did it in Atlanta. And out of the go, it was, I'm going to do this for 3 years and then sell it and then go get an MBA.
Okay.
And people would say to me, "Oh, I'm like you, Jason. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to do something entrepreneurial." I'd say, I'm not an entrepreneur. They're like, "Well, you own your own pest control company." I'm like, "That's just work experience." I grew up, like I said, living in my grandparents' basement. We kind of glossed over that. And we lived in a pretty wealthy part of the world.
Okay.
And it made me very aware of, I didn't want to stay in my grandparents' basement with my cousins.
Sure.
So it was a great life, but it was a small house. And in that house, there was one full bathroom, one 3/4 bathroom, only a couple bedrooms, 3 maybe.
Yeah.
My grandparents, my aunt and uncle, and their 4 kids. And then my parents, and at the time we had 4 kids. That's pretty crowded.
Wow, yeah. Tight quarters.
And then where we went to church and to school was pretty wealthy, and churches especially was extremely wealthy. And I thought, I would like to not be in my grandparents' basement when I get older.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good goal.
And so at least that's where a lot of the hunger came from for me.
Got it.
Like in the early time, and we can move on. But in choosing accounting, I almost wondered about the ethics of how BYU does it. And what I mean by that is, you said it earlier. Did you go to BYU?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So tell me about your experience of how what jobs did they present for you from the BYU accounting school?
Yeah, it was pretty much Big Four accounting jobs. And I felt like the culture a little bit was, if you deviated from that course and you went and talked to your professors about, hey, I'm actually looking at investment banking or, some other finance or consulting role, there was always a little bit of concern or, discouragement, maybe a little bit from the professors or the structure. And so, yeah, it's very much like, the Big Four accounting program, or the accounting program is sponsored by the Big Four, and like that's the path you should take.
Why do you think that is?
I have to imagine there's some sort of funding occurring or something from these programs, sponsorship to the school. I don't know. That's what I would guess. That's what we speculated.
Yeah, I don't know either, but generally speaking, is part of thinking strategically, and part of at least some of the things that have worked for me as an entrepreneur is by asking questions about why people do what they do. Mm-hmm. And if you can start with the original assumption that people are smart and that people are acting in their own best interest, then you can watch their behavior and say, why are they doing that? Mm-hmm. Well, that happened to me a lot at BYU. Yeah. It still happens to me when I look at BYU. Sure. But specifically for the accounting program, I'll give you an example. About where I thought things got fuzzy with accounting. By the way, I'm glad I have a degree from BYU.
Yeah,
I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for it, and I'm glad it was accounting. Institution. And while I was getting the accounting degree, I would think to myself, "Wow, I can't believe they put together a program that's this good."
Sure. Yeah.
Like the amount of time it would have taken to put together the syllabus, and I just think that there were some genius things that they did. Having said that, when I was a freshman, our now Senator Mike Lee's father was the new university president. My freshman year was his inauguration.
Okay.
And I think if I remember right, one of his big pushes was everyone get out of here in 4 years, which I think is noble and good.
Yeah.
So come prepared, know what you're going to study, and then get your degree in 4 years.
Yeah.
My memory is he turned to the faculty and said, reduce the course load so students can get out of here in 4 years. So they took what it looked to me that I could look at of all the accounting courses that you needed to get a degree and made what we call the core.
Right.
And so instead of going and taking business law, financial accounting 300, I'm making them up.
Sure.
Managerial accounting 302.
Yeah.
Right. Tax 306.
Yeah.
They combined them all into the core and they just gave you what, 12 and a half credits?
Yeah.
But when I looked at it, because my wife, who was ahead of me, went through before the junior core was put together. And I thought, it looks to me like there's 15 to 17 credits here.
Sure.
And you're giving me 12 credits.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Right.
And I'm just questioning, is it so you could turn to Rex Lee, President Lee, and say, look, President, we did what you said. We decreased the course load, so now people get out of here in 4 years because what used to be, I'm making it up hypothetically, 30 credits required, we made it 24 or 25. But then turn to the students and tell me if they told you this, because they said to us, this is only 12 credits, but don't take any other classes because it's heavy. Did they say that to you?
Yeah.
So my question is that because it really wasn't 12 credits? Because when I added it up, it looked like it was 14, 15, 16, 17 credits. Is that ethical? I mean, if indeed that's what happened, is it ethical, and is that really what happened? Did they really turn upward to the university president and say, we reduced the course load, but then to turn around to the students and say, but don't take any of their classes? Because in my opinion, wink, wink, this is more than 12 credits worth of work. And we just condensed it. Now, the problem with that is to get a CPA license, you have to have X amount of credits of accounting. So if you're actually cheating the accounting students, you and me, out of those credits, now do we have to go pay for them somewhere else? Do we have to go get a master's in business if we want our CPA licenses in these different states? And so I've always questioned the ethics of that, still to this day.
Yeah, it was definitely intense. I mean, no doubt about it. It was a year of my life that, it was worth it in the end. But yeah, it was very much an intensive workload, and glad that ultimately got through it, had the experience, grateful for it, but pivoted, as it sounds like you did as well. So take us through, Jason, from...
Well, just real quickly to finish that thought.
Yeah, sure.
So then we're graduating, and if is it the university's intention to help what's in your best interest, or is it to do what's in the school's best interest, or are those interests aligned? And I don't really have an answer for this, but if you and I both felt that some of the best jobs we were being offered weren't in accounting, then why were we pushed so hard to go to the big four firms? Now, certainly, I think that perhaps part of the ranking of the accounting program comes from those accounting firms. And the better you're able to supply them with top graduates because you have a great program, and no doubt the program's great. But do you have a duty? Like, who are you serving? Do you see what I'm saying? Sure. Like, why were you and I not pushed or even told about, or did anyone even tell us there were these other jobs?
Right.
Because I think BYU's accounting school is so good, and they have so many great students that they could put people still into some of the great investment banks and get some of the other work experiences that would get you to Harvard and get you to Stanford and get you to these other schools. You just need to go more the consulting investment banking route. And so I've just questioned why didn't, at least in my time, the accounting school do that. And I don't think it's necessarily, I think the school has a clear vision. I'm just guessing. This is our vision, and we can keep our high ranking and funding by pushing people into those accounting programs. And that maybe out of those accounting programs, people will leave the big four and work their way into the industry that way.
Sure.
If that's the case, you're looking more usually at a career path that's going to go the chief financial officer route and not so much the CEO route, right?
Right. Yeah, and I would encourage, one thing that they have done better at is implementing a lot of these clubs. So I would encourage anyone listening to this who's in school or going into a university setting to, despite your track or your curriculum, go join a bunch of clubs, go network, go sit down with people and learn different careers. I took entrepreneurship classes and lecture series and just trying to get exposure, because if you're all in on your major and you just kind of, you know, dived head first there, you can get pigeonholed a little bit in terms of the track you're on. So yeah, and that's why, you know, I saw other opportunities out there despite kind of having, you know, a certain program pushed my way, was able to see other options out there. So,
and if you don't know what you want to do, study accounting. So you made a comment earlier saying we didn't really go that way. I did. I totally went the accounting route. I would not have been able to do the things that I've done and that I do on a daily basis without that degree. I think accounting is the language of business. I think it's a phenomenal degree for entrepreneurs to get. I think that if you're at BYU and you're studying business, change your degree to accounting. Yeah. If you can get in the accounting school, it's a phenomenal program.
It is.
And I use that degree every day.
That's great. So yeah, tell us what did you do out of school? So did you start a pest control company as soon as you graduated? You turned down some other offers. What happened after your college experience?
So the total amount of time I was with Eclipse Marketing, was the company I was with, was 5 summer seasons. Okay. And so it spanned most of my college. And then when I graduated, I stayed for a little bit more than a year, I think. Okay. With Eclipse Marketing.
And this is a pest control. Was it pest control or was it solar? Okay. Pest
control.
There
was no solar, and it was back at the very birth of like alarms. Okay. This is way back when, from my memory, Todd Peterson, who's the founder of Vivint, was back in pest control back in the early days, right?
So every summer you went and sold pests while you're at BYU. Okay. And then did another year after you graduated. Okay. And take us from there.
Yeah. So as I graduated, I was the vice president in charge of that company, but it was just a marketing company, meaning they didn't own the pest control service. Okay. And so I was trying to convince the owners of the company we should start our own pest control company because we don't have any leverage whatsoever. And we need to be able to control our destiny. Yeah. Without the actual pest control company, we can't do that. And eventually their answer was no. And so then I tendered my resignation, and I said, I'm going to go start a pest control company. And I had a partner who was 20 years roughly older than I was. Yeah. And we decided to go to Dallas to start a pest control company. That was daunting because my life went from managing, 150 plus people to employees at the time, to going and starting a pest control company where you're putting together the systems and processes and servicing accounts. I was in a truck servicing accounts from 7 o'clock in the morning to oftentimes 9 o'clock at night that first year.
Sure.
And then trying to learn how to learn the causality of pest control, meaning learn really what products are effective and which ones aren't in use, not from what you're going to get from a textbook, and how rotating products helps, what products are really the best for spiders or different species of spiders, where do I see them, how can I develop good training programs, for my company internally, to just basically like, how do you put together the billing of customers, how do you put together a good office staff. Yeah. So all that happened in those first few years. I made mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. And I always intended to sell it. And so at the end of 3 years, I ended up selling it to my partner. Okay. And that is when I decided to be an entrepreneur. Okay. Is I made the decision not to go get an MBA.
And why? So why was that? What was the mindset? Because I was similar when I was at BYU. When I first started there, I was like, I'm going to do the accounting program. I'm going to do the master's in accounting, and then I'm going to go work and then get an MBA, maybe even an MBA Juris Doctorate, get just degreed out the wazoo, and feel like legitimate with all these degrees and just. I thought that's what I wanted to do, and maybe be a lawyer or a doctor. But what was the mind shift for you after you'd been through that 3-year experience?
First of all, did you get a Mac?
No, okay. I did not.
Me either. My wife does, so she had a master's in tax accounting. Okay. But I don't. I just have the undergraduate. So the question is, one more time, is...
Yeah, just why did you decide not to get an MBA and pursue an entrepreneurial path? What was the shift in your mentality?
Well, first, I didn't think that I could get into Stanford and Harvard with that work experience. Okay. So that I thought I was able to show that I came up with a strategy for pest control. Back then, people weren't starting pest control companies, so it was novel. I was able to show that I did it with minimal capital and manage the capital resources and manage the human resources, but it was such a small scale, I don't think that was enough to hedge the risk for people who are looking for like world-class executives. So I thought I would have gone to a second tier school, good school, but a second tier school.
Sure. Okay.
And that wasn't as inviting to me or appealing. Second, I thought, wow, I learned so much in these 3 years. I could do this way better. And I could easily build a $100 million company. And I'm just going to go do that. And then we'll see what happens from there.
So, okay. And what was the name of the first company that you started with?
Mayday. Mayday Pest Control,
Mayday Pest Control. Okay. So you sell it to your partner. Did you have any sort of like windfall there? Like were you able to, okay. So did you have, I guess what happened then? What was the name of the second company and how did you get that off the ground?
Yeah, it was Moxie.
Okay, that was
Moxie Pest Control. Yeah, I started it I formed it in, I think, December of 2000. So the first summer was 2001. And so in our industry, your largest capital exposure is when you hire the salespeople, then they finish selling, and now you owe them for the sales they made.
Yeah.
And so at the end of that first summer, that's when the 2001 attack happened into the World Trade Center.
Right.
And that was just a very scary time to be an American. It was a scary time, I think, for the world. It was a scary time. There's just so much uncertainty for those of us that remember that, and we're adults when that happened. To compound that with, I was at my maximum exposure for the business that I just started. So when I started Moxie, within those first 3 months, I had Moxie bigger than the other company was after 3 years.
Wow.
So I came out of the gate kind of fast because I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was able to scale. And I started it in Dallas and in Austin. And that was just a really interesting time. I was a young father. And
how old are you at that time?
I would have been about 30.
Okay.
Yeah, 29, 30.
Yeah.
So, first summer down and second summer going, have little kids. And what happened was a few years in, my son Joshua was born, and he was born very prematurely.
Okay.
Enough so where he needed a lot of medical attention and attention from his parents. In fact, they didn't expect him to survive.
Wow.
And they were pretty adamant about telling my wife and I, you should just take him off life support.
Oh man.
So we chose not to do that. But what it entailed is we needed to give him 8 to 12 hours a day of structured therapy is what we chose to do, like to help kind of rewire his brain.
Okay.
And so we did that. And to do that, though, we needed to sell Moxie. And so we were only 3-4 years in. So I had like this great vision, decided not to go to business school. Here we're going to go build this great company. We owned all of it. And then we sold it. And we did not want to, but we wanted to take care of our son. Yeah. So from the business perspective, we then had a couple people that had worked for me that chose to stay while we were going to be building this massive company. And now I'm saying I'm selling it. And so I felt like I owed them an apology because I wasn't keeping my commitments to them. And so that's when I came up with the shared ownership model that kind of Moxie currently has. And it was born in an apology. I'm sorry we're not able to do this. How about a lot of these salespeople that we have, and how about the capital that I have and the knowledge that I have? I'll train you to run a pest control company. I'll invest the capital and help you get started, and you can start your own Moxie. And so I had one person do that in Southern California. I had another person do it in Oklahoma City. And they were successful, but I was only really very involved in helping that get started.
Okay.
I wasn't out there managing the operations of them. And didn't really even self-actualize I was staying in pest control. I didn't know what I was doing. But we'd sold it for, it was an 8-figure amount. And
nice.
So we weren't thinking, we need to, how are we going to eat?
Yeah.
And it was my second exit, right?
Yeah.
So we spent 3 years helping our son, and it was unbelievably successful. In fact, he's now a sophomore at Utah Valley University, doing extremely well. Great student, studying political science, and he's brilliant.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and things have gone really well that way. Most of that credit goes to my wife, who really is the main person that organized and ran all of that therapy that needed to be done for him, that I think was absolutely instrumental in his healing.
Great.
Yeah. So, but there we are, right? So now after 3 years, we moved to San Diego. There was a few people who saw what I'd done and said, "Hey, can we do this as well?" And so I said, "Sure." So I let a few more people start some of these locations, and I still didn't necessarily self-actualize. I was in pest control. I started a company in San Diego because I moved there. I called it Joshua's Pest Control after my son.
Okay.
And said, well, this is something to do. And, maybe my kids will work here when they get older. We'll see.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, a lot of...
But I was not like building a big company. In my head at that time, I was in holding mode. Think of an airplane that's coming to land and it's told it can't land, and so you get into a holding pattern.
Yeah.
So I was not committed to pest control, the industry, or to any. I was committed to people. I was committing to helping those first two people, and then committing to helping these other people who'd been loyal to me.
Yeah.
And then it happened to those first two people just said, you know what, we're going to sell and probably just go do this on our own. I'm like, great. So one of them was an 8-figure exit again, which was again great for me, and the other one was a 7-figure exit. And I thought it was fantastic.
That's awesome.
But I wasn't. So there I had now this time 2 8-figure exits, 1 7-figure exit. I was talking to my friends about other industries and what I wanted to do with my life. Now I'm in my mid 30s, and I don't know. Not in a hurry to do anything, but I don't know what I want to do. And there I was. That was me at 35.
Okay. Yeah, that's wow. Okay, so just to dive into a couple things, when you sold Moxie the first time after 3 to 4 years, from a structural standpoint, when you sell a pest control company, you mentioned you're in Dallas and Austin. Mm-hmm. So was that just selling those branches, or was it the brand itself, the name, everything? Like who did you sell it to?
Yeah. So first off, I started in Dallas and Austin. By the time I sold it, it was Dallas, Austin, Houston, San Antonio, and Atlanta.
Okay.
And so I had 5 locations.
Okay.
So secondly, I sold it to Terminix.
Okay, big name.
And third, there's different ways you can structure a sale, right? You can buy stock. And when I say stock, whether the company's a limited liability company or a partnership or a limited partnership, or a C corporation, like publicly traded companies on the stock market. What I mean is to say you buy the controlling ownership of the company, mm-hmm. however that's structured. Or you can just buy assets out of the company. And I did asset purchase agreements,
okay,
which means I was selling assets. And so what you're selling is vehicles are assets, so you may sell some trucks. As you said, the name of the company is an asset. I did not sell that.
Got it.
Right. All of the proprietary information of how you set up the company, I did not sell that either.
Okay.
And then you have all your customers and the contracts you have with the customers or customer lists. That's the main thing you're selling, where most of the revenue is.
Yeah.
So those were asset purchase agreements.
Okay.
And that's how they were structured.
Okay. So you sell off mostly all the assets other than the name and the brand. And then from there, you went to some key employees, and was it basically like a franchise that you set up with these individuals, where you helped capitalize them if they went to Orlando or wherever they went? How did you structure those deals to kind of rebirth Moxie?
Well, first off, a franchise has a very specific meaning, and so sometimes people will look at a structure that has shared ownership and call it a franchise, mm-hmm. but think of what a franchise is. I mean, a lot of us right now know of Crumble Cookie. Sure. Crumble, I apologize if I'm saying this wrong, and I don't know really how you're structured, but I assume it's a franchise model, and I could be wrong.
It is, yeah.
And from what I've heard, it's wildly successful. Yep. And the people I know do very well. So well done to everyone. But my understanding is a lot of times in a franchise, you'll put up money for some geographic area or for something for the right to use the name in that area. Mm-hmm. So it actually costs you money in the beginning in a franchise model, not any franchise model. Yeah. Right. And then you probably need to follow systems and processes. Maybe it's going to be controlled, like how you do different things are going to be controlled. Right.
Right.
And then you're going to be able to control some of the profits or the windfalls. So in my model, nobody put up money.
That's nice. It's a nice feature for them.
It's not a franchise.
Yeah.
Right. So what I did is I had a shared ownership model that's kind of changed a little bit over time. Okay. But some of the earliest ones, people would just go to their area and they just had ownership in X amount of ownership. But I put up all the money and they were drawing salary immediately. So their risk and their cost was really their opportunity cost.
Got it.
And that's pretty much how my deals have been have been done moving forward is it's a shared ownership model. I have funded all of them or the majority of them.
Okay.
When I say the majority of them, it's in a few of the instances along the way, maybe my partners put in some money.
Okay.
But in those early stages, it was still pretty decentralized. Meaning I wasn't committed still to being heavily involved. So I was helping them, train them initially, and they said, go do your thing. How much money do you want to make? And they say, I want to make this much. Okay, you need this many customers. And they go put on those customers. And the problem we had was most of these people from the sales side, they didn't understand still the causality of pest control, of what makes customers stay with you, refer people, cancel, not cancel, what helps the basic, what are the factors that influence the health of your actual business. Mm-hmm. And so my partners just blew right by. And I'm not talking about the first couple. They sold the terminals. I'm talking about the next guys that came in.
Yeah.
And we were still decentralized because they're kind of running their own shops. And we had a day that we called Black Friday, where I called everyone back to San Diego, and I gave them financial statements of when they were each going bankrupt. And they kind of laughed in the beginning. I said, "This is not joking.
Yeah.
Like, if my math's wrong, then you let me know. But I have a feeling none of you have any idea, because I don't think you look at your financial statements or you're making business decisions in any way that's that's holding yourself accountable to forecasts and performance."
Yeah.
And so then it became very dark and somber. That's why we call it Black Friday. It happened on a Friday.
Got it.
And because I think their definition was basically based in growth. And welcome to the sales environment that we're in now, because that's still the case. People, these young kids that are working for different marketing companies, define success. My company's successful because of how fast it's growing.
Yeah.
Whereas if you'll pause and you'll just look at our industry, especially the pest control industry, look at anybody who was growing really fast over the last 7 years, and you'll find that they probably weren't doing what they said they were going to do. Mm-hmm. And they had to pivot or alter. Like, why are they not doing what they said they're going to do? And I'm not going to name names, but pretty much all the big ones, when I joined, said, this is what we're going to do. And they didn't end up doing what they said. Yeah. And my strong opinion on that, and it was even predicted by us from knowing the finances, was that financially it wasn't going to work out. What they were, how the structuring, it just wasn't going to work. Yeah. And mainly because there's a strong emphasis on growth. Like, how do you have a strong foundation of people who are experts in pest control, not only delivering the service, but who are the managers that are doing that? I mean, it's very difficult to build a skyscraper and then go say, oh, now we're going to go build a foundation. Yeah. We got to be worth hundreds of millions, and now we're going to go, like, we're going to go hire someone that's going to help us do pest control. It's not that easy, right? Your culture, all companies already have a culture. And now you're going to say you're going to go rebuild the foundation. That's hard, right? Yeah. And you're going to find people in organizations that are extremely resistant to that. And so I went the other way and said, let's build a strong foundation, then let's scale. Right. And so that was the Black Friday was the beginning of that. Is I had these my partners come back to San Diego and showed them why Joshua was so successful in San Diego, and what we did to have good customer retention, good employee retention, a positive work environment, and why the business was fundamentally extremely healthy. And then partner by partner, they'd buy into that and they'd start implementing those changes, and we'd start becoming much more centralized in how we were working together, sharing information, holding each other accountable for the systems and processes. And that, when my partners really started buying into the brand, into the culture, then that's where I re-engaged and committed, said, all right, I'm back. Okay. I'm back in pest control, and like, we'll help. Because I always said, like, I will not help you scale something where you're just going to build the towering inferno. It's just going to collapse under its own weight. Yeah. If you want to build a real business, then we need to start with the foundation. What's the mission? What are your core values? What's the culture? Build out that culture. Mm-hmm. And then the brand and the culture have to be the same. Too many businesses, that's not the case. Marketing people come in and the business will say, here's what we're good at. And it's really good customer facing, but the customers are eventually going to find out the duplicity of the company. I mean, if you keep saying you're the best at customer service, but you're not, customers will figure that out. Sure. If you keep saying we're the fastest to respond to your pest needs, and it's not, people are going to figure that out. It doesn't matter what your business is. Yeah. And so we doubled down when everyone else was making the bet big, and I still see that today. We said, let's build a foundation of of quality and invest in people, in leaders. And we paid for a lot of people to get their MBAs. We have people in operations with law degrees that have passed the bar. And we were way out of balance with a bunch of smart, capable, sharp people in the beginning that we could scale on.
And I've even looking at your guys' website and just hearing about Moxie relative to a lot of the other groups out there, it does seem that way, where you guys almost seem a little bit more mature in terms of structure, foundation, marketing, just kind of how you operate. And I think it's because you've been around for, you know, a lot longer than some of these other groups. And so kudos to you guys.
Thanks.
Are you still doing that same model today? So you were in San Diego, you have these other partners that are putting up, you know, different locations. Is that still how it operates, Moxie, today?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's still how it operates. And it's fun because my partners are now all seasoned veterans. They know what they're doing. They know their way around their financial statements. We get together regularly and are accountable to each other. So, for example, next Monday or Tuesday is an annual meeting where all my partners will be here in Utah, and they will all, one by one, put up their forecasts for next year and the next 3 years, and then we'll put up their forecasts that they did last year, and then they have to explain the variances of them, and they'll already have it prepared. So, and like literally at the financial statement level, they'll go through the line items, the financial statement level, and through all their budgeting and forecasts, the key ratios that we look at.
Great.
And everyone will be accountable. Again, accounting degree is helpful for that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it is a ton of fun. And we're accountable for not just the financial standards, but also the qualitative standards and other things that we measure. We're I think, relatively sophisticated in the amount of follow-up and training that is required. And when you become more sophisticated in the training and the follow-up of your systems and processes, then it's harder to find people who can do the job because the job's harder.
Yeah.
It takes more skill.
Right.
And so we have a hard time, quite frankly, hiring people in our industry to work for us because we demand more.
Yeah.
This is what I found.
Right.
I think that people who have been with us and they go to other places, I think, first of all, they're offered great jobs, but I think they have a hard time sometimes finding the satisfaction because so much less, it's not as sophisticated. It's less of a challenge, and maybe it's just a different environment. Yeah, that's changing. I mean, some of our competitors are just, everyone just keeps getting better and better and better. Yeah, and it's getting to be a pretty healthy industry where we're competing against a lot of sharp, smart, capable, good businessmen and women. Yeah, how do you look at the competitive, competition or competitive set right now? So my brother actually, he works at RID Pest Control, which is another newer group, 2 or 3 years old. And so I'd say, like, why do they exist? I mean, where did they spring from? And maybe it was somebody who had a plan that didn't follow through with the plan. And I don't know all the details. Yeah. So he's got ownership out in Orlando. From what I know, they're doing great. But when you look at all the competitors, Utah's, it looks like saturated in terms of pest control and brands and groups that are doing marketing and so forth. But how do you, is that good for the industry to have all these groups popping up, or do you guys look at them, as direct competition? I don't know. What's the lay of the land for you guys in terms of competition and how you look at it? Yeah, so I think competition's great and healthy. Sure. And you mentioned a company that I have a lot of respect for, RID. I mean, I don't know them, but everything that I've heard is great. Yeah. And so I think that and that's what I meant by some of the quality of the competitors like RID. They just need to be run by sharp, capable people. And as the industry becomes more seasoned, then you have more seasoned executives who are running these companies. I'm glad that I feel like in our industry there's been a more of an uptick of moral conduct. That I believe that the majority of the time in industry, from my perspective, there are people doing criminal activity as the norm. And I hope that that's not still happening today. But I mean, for my opinion, there's a lot of criminal activity that's been happening in our industry, or unethical at best. Yeah. And so I think it's for me, that's frustrating, because here you are at a place in Utah, at BYU, at a place that's fundamental to my faith, and to have some of our best and brightest young women and young men who are at a very vulnerable part of their career to be taught and I think the whole sales industry, no matter what you're selling worldwide, has a reputation where people kind of just say, how honest is that? Yeah. I believe that our industry has done a tremendous amount of damage to the moral fiber of the young women and young men who've been a part of it over the last 15 years. 15 to 20 years. Interesting. Like tremendous damage. Because the way you do anything is the way you do everything. Yeah. So if you're taught how to rationalize either unethical and or criminal type behavior and saying, well, look how many people are doing it, so therefore it must be okay. And this person that I respect from these other walks of my life, they're doing it, so it must be okay. My mission president's doing it, or my mission leaders or whatever, who I knew from my LDS services, so therefore it must be okay.
Yeah.
And I think that I didn't mean mission president. I meant mission leaders.
Yeah.
So like people that you were working with in your mission. Then I think that's I think that has led people down to some behaviors that become problematic in the future. Because if that's your foundation when you're in your young 20s, then you're going to carry that same thought process and that same way of making decisions and your same moral code into your 30s and into your 40s. And it grows like a cancer, and it affects your relationships, your family relationships and your business relationships, and affects you as an individual. You can't be duplicitous and doing these unethical things here, but then turn and say, but over here, this is my moral code.
Right.
And that's the whole concept of, I love the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Steve Covey.
It's a great book.
And by the way, if I'm saying this, I feel like as I'm talking now, like I'm standing on a moral high horse, and I'm not. So I challenge the people in our organization to come to me and tell me when they think I'm off, unethically, legally, immorally. And I love it when people do it. And it's happened over the years a lot, where people will come and say, I don't know that this is right. I think that what you're doing, hey, what you just said in that meeting, I thought it was unethical. And I'll say, why? And then we'll sit and have a discussion about it. I need that type of a culture. And it's one of the top 3 things about being an entrepreneur to me is that you have some say, at least half the say of who you work with. And so I love the fact that I've been fortunate to surround myself with women and men who are smart and ethical, and who I feel like intellectually and ethically, I need to keep up. I need to increase my game and become better at what I do.
I love that.
So we do a lot of training out of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and people will say to me a lot, like, how did you get so good at this? And I'm like, I'll let you know a little secret. The reason I still do this is because I'm not that great. I'm still working on it, right? I don't feel like I've mastered any of this stuff, which is why I still focus on it so much.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, reputation is everything, and ingraining that reputation with ethics and a moral compass and moral code, people can see through that if you're not being authentic, and it just takes one misstep or one unethical situation to kind of derail your reputation. So I think honing in on that and really focusing on it and part of your culture and your company is awesome. And I feel like I've seen that shift too at BYU, and trying to get recruited by summer sales guys to go out and do pest or solar. There is that certain connotation or reputation of like, well, am I just going to go rip some old lady off on her doorstep, and get her in this 20-year contract for what but I feel like there has been a shift in, working or seeing my brother work in the industry and meeting more people like you and my buddy, Braxton Davies, who was on the show with Brooks Pest Control.
I've heard great things about him and that company. Yeah.
They're
like great things.
That's great. They're great. So I think there has been a shift and push towards more, integrity and all of that. So it's an awesome industry. How do you split your time right now? So you mentioned Joshua.
Yeah.
Moxie. So is Joshua still around? How do you split your time between the two?
Between my family or between Joshua's and Moxie?
Sorry, Joshua's Pest Control, the other company that you started down in San Diego.
Oh, well, so now Joshua has multiple locations.
Okay.
So there's a Joshua's in San Diego, there's one in Chicago, there's one in Kansas City, St. Louis, Minneapolis. I may not have them all. So, and San Diego. So at this point in time, I live here in Utah. I moved here over a year ago, and I split my time, I would say more between my family and company. And my time is more, I would also divide it into how much of my time is spent in the here and now versus planning for the future. And there's not really a distinction between Joshua's and Moxie because it's still folded under the same brand.
Oh, it is? Okay.
I mean, I know they're different names, but the way they function, report, and what they're doing is, I mean, functionally speaking, there's problems the fact that there's those two brands. But from an operations standpoint, when we're getting together reporting, all of the internal operations of how we report and how we do things and how we do the training, those things are the same.
And did you structure Joshua's Pest Control the same way you did Moxie with these partners who have, you know, some ownership in branches, or are you the all-out owner for Joshua's versus Moxie?
Yeah, so there's a couple locations where I'm the all-out owner.
Okay.
There's at least one in Joshua's and at least one in Moxie where I own all of it.
Okay.
And then there's the majority of the Joshua's are structured exactly how the Moxies are structured in a shared ownership model.
Got it.
Yeah.
And when you put up all the capital yourself to buy the trucks and get at the office, and then you plant a partner in there, how do you view the risk versus reward? I mean, do these operating partners who you're sending out there have capital, skin in the game? How do you balance that? I mean, it sounds like you are personally taking a lot of the risk to fund these offices and get them off the ground.
That's why it's not a franchise.
Yeah. That's why you have.
Because in a franchise, I think that the person that's doing the franchise goes and gets the funding, right?
Yeah.
And puts up money, right?
Yeah. How do you split the ownership? I mean, I don't know if you can share that, but what's the typical, like, hey, Jason versus the operating partner?
Yeah, you know, it varies. And no, I don't really talk about that much, but it varies.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's top secret, but I'm just not going to talk about my ownership.
All good.
The structures. But there's a lot of ownership that my partners have.
That's good.
And they all do really well.
Good.
So they all do really well.
Good. Well, what's next for you guys? So how many offices do you have right now between Joshua's and Moxie? And what are the next, you know, what's your goal of the next few years? What's it look like for you?
Yeah, so there's 32 offices, I think, is what we currently have.
Okay.
I may be off by that by one or two.
Sure.
The goals for me, a lot of them are still just qualitative and making sure that we're focusing in our mission statement, our core values, and our brand. And I think that entrepreneurs' job is to carry the mission and to understand the brand and to protect it.
Yeah.
And so for me, that usually means don't grow too fast. And so that's such an unpopular thing to say in the summer sales program. My competitors make fun of me of saying, well, look how slow they grow, which, I mean, we've been growing 40, 50% a year for the last few years. And internally, I'm saying that's too fast. And externally, like, look how slow he grows, to which I'll say, again, historically, if you look at the companies who grew faster, even at that speed, they don't exist anymore. They collapsed. So I'm not sure that young salespeople are correctly, no, I'll say different. I am sure that they're not correctly assessing risk. If you're with a really fast growing company, then you need to know there's risk in what you're doing, a lot of risk. So my job is to make sure that we stay on brand, that the vision is clear, and that we're keeping to our core values and our mission statement. Everything is aligned to improve the quality of life for our team members, our customers, and our communities. And that's my job. As far as, I think what you're asking is how much are we going to grow and what are we going to do in the future? Well, that's where it's fun, because there's so many things we can do. And first of all, are my partners, what do they want to do? What does each one want? Do they want to open up new locations, or do I have new partners that come and open locations, or am I going to do those on my own? Right now we're doing it just through that partnership model. And that seems like it's the best way to go.
Yeah.
And that's the way I think I see us going in the future. Are we going to do other service lines? We're going to do, maybe. We already sort of we've actually started doing some of that. Everything has to be measured against, for me, the golden goose. And the golden goose is the pest control customers. So if we start doing any other service line or anything, we are constantly measuring how well we're taking care of our customers, like obsessively. So we do a lot of regression analysis and other things to try to look at causality between things. So if I started doing a service line and realized that my customers were canceling at a higher rate in pest control, then I would just stop.
Sure.
But if I'm doing a service line and I realize that, hey, they're actually staying longer and they're referring people at a higher rate, well, that's good. Maybe we should do more of that. But anything that starts to indicate that I'm not delivering increased value to my customers, my pest control customers, then I will stop doing that thing.
That makes perfect sense. Do you envision another sale or liquidity event for Moxie or Joshua's Pest Control, or are you kind of slow and steady cash flow, just keep it going as it is?
Yeah, no, that's what we're doing. I mean, I have multiple inquiries
Yeah.
from people wanting to infuse with cash or to help us broker a sale or people are interested in buying it. I mean, like weekly, I have multiple weekly.
I bet.
And I don't interact with any of them. That's just not the direction that we're going. We're passionate about what we're doing, about the brand that we're building, about our position in the industry. We're increasing the quality of life of our team members and our customers and our communities. And I could talk about that for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I love it. And I think it's noble. I'm passionate about it. I don't know what profession out there is more noble. Why is being an investment banker better than improving people's lives in the service industry?
Right.
You know, by serving your employees and helping empower them with greater knowledge, skill, hard and soft skills, helping the focusing on principle-centered living and principle-centered living leadership, and seeing their lives improve. That's really rewarding. I mean, if I didn't do this, I'd say I'd want to be a high school teacher. But why would that even be better than what teaching is what we do, and teaching and learning, and I love it. And so. Look, at this point in my life, like, what is a liquidity event going to give me? Like, where is that exciting for me? So there's nothing that I'm wanting to go buy.
Sure.
And that's just not exciting. You ask, will it ever happen? Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, because really that question is, do you mean, is it going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Is it going to happen in my lifetime? Or is the company going to be generational that exists for, to the next generation without a liquidity event? Because even if you look at Terminix and Orkin, I mean, you'll see, maybe going public, not going public, being sold to private equity groups. So just because a brand lives on doesn't mean there wasn't a liquidity event.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is I love what I do. I don't take calls or conversations that have to do with giving me capital or liquidity events. And in my lifetime, could I see a liquidity event happening? Sure. Yeah, when I don't like what I'm doing anymore, there's a lot of things that could happen in someone's life. Like happened with my son, Josh. I wasn't planning to sell the company then either.
Sure.
But things happened. And so that's something like that's what it would take, at least for me, to say I'm going to exit.
Yeah.
It has to not be fun anymore. Something has to happen where I just don't have the time or the passion. And that's just not where we are. I think all of my partners and I are really passionate and excited about what we're doing.
I love it. Well, and I think that that's a little bit unique too, where a lot of the competition is, build for 3 years, sell, build, sell, build, sell. But you guys are, more generational. You love what you do. You're loving what you've built, and there's a lot to be said about that. So
the bigger we get, the more it's hard to make sure that it's honest and ethical. It's harder to supervise 2,000 people than it is to supervise 30 or 40.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one of the more concerning things when we're talking about ethics that I've heard someone, like the main leaders of someone in our industry say, and I've heard it from more than one person, is they say, what's easy about the sales industry of recruiting summer salespeople, especially in the BYU culture, is that Revelation's for sale. They're like, as soon as I found out Revelation was for sale, business went better for me.
Geez.
Meaning that for people who are praying about what they can do, if I offer them enough money, then it doesn't matter what other factors are going on. If I offer enough, then people will come to me and they'll feel like it was from Revelation. Yes. If you sit and contemplate that, of how destructive that mindset is, or that mentality, and what all the ramifications are of thinking that way.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm saying that because it makes me pause instead of casting stones and saying, what are the things that I'm doing personally and the things my company's doing internally that are, what do we need to do to better safeguard each other's virtue, each other's integrity, each other's honor? And that becomes increasingly challenging, like I said, when you have 2,000 people instead of 30 people.
Yep.
But if at the top in your organization, people think like that, then you can guess that that's going to be pervasive, throughout.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes down to culture, training, from the top. And it sounds like you guys are doing it the right way.
Oh, we're
or at least trying.
We're trying, but we also need people to keep us in check.
Yeah.
Like there's nobody on a white knight that's infallible. I mean, it's in a competitive environment where you're making hard decisions. And that's why I say it's really important for me. I need people to surround myself. I need to be surrounded by people who are protecting my integrity and my honor because they love me enough to tell me when they think I'm misstepping. And I hope that I would have the same amount of respect for the people that I'm working with.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the key ingredients that I look for at every level within my organization. But when I say that, it sounds like, oh, he's saying his organization's great and they don't have any problems. I'm saying the opposite, right? I'm saying that we're getting bigger and that and it's competitive, and that I think that one of the things that I'm passionate about and that's very much on the front of my mind is to make sure we're doing things the right way, that we're improving the quality of lives of people by really focusing on principle-centered living. Because it's really easy for an institution to say, we're going to say we're doing principle-centered living, but good grief, if we just look the other way or don't talk about this, look how much more money we'll make.
Yeah.
It's so easy to do.
It's a fine line to walk. Well, just a couple more questions for you, Jason. You're pretty active on social media. I see you on LinkedIn, Instagram. You've got a podcast that you do, which is great. Kind of all focused, it looks like, on self-betterment, trying to improve, whether it's business or finance or personal. So leading into that, what are some habits that you've established throughout your career, things that you do on a daily basis or weekly or annual that you feel have been helpful in helping you stay on track or better your career?
Well, I think before I talk about what I do on a daily or weekly basis, I would back up a little bit and say, what is my purpose and mission? Who am I? Like, what do I stand for? And what does success look like to me? What's the answer to that question? I think it's 7 Habits. I would call that beginning with the end in mind. Like, who do I want to, what do I want from my life? And if you were to interview people at the end of my life and they were to be honest, what would they say about me? And a lot of times people will ask me, what's the easiest way to be successful? I'd say, oh, that's simple. Set really, really easy goals. Just say, all I have to do is get up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 days a week. And then if you do that, you're successful. And people go, well, that's not what I expected. Well, what the learning point isn't, that's not the learning point. The learning point is you can't be successful without knowing where you're going. So on the map, who are you as a person and where are you headed? And then we can start talking about your business, but who are you? And I was 20s and I thought one way when I was in my 20s and another way when I was in my 30s, another way in my 40s. I'm just in my I'm 51 now. And so my kids are raised, I'm an empty nester. And so you just have a different perspective on life and where you are, where you're going. And so the other answer to your daily things like that changes. The thing that hasn't changed so much for me is the bigger answers of who I want to be and what I consider success to be. And that's where, for the people who are listening, I would say put a lot of time into answering those questions, not just once, but continually answer those questions. Because when you figure that out, then you can make your personal mission statement and it starts to come in focus of who you want to be. And a lot of these ancillary decisions that you have to make along the way, they become much easier to make when you know who you are and what you stand for. And I would strongly encourage people to give heavy thought into defining success by principle-centered living. That there are these unchanging principles in the universe that, like gravity, but other principles like kindness, fairness, loyalty, integrity. And when we value those principles through our actions, then that's going to make for a much happier life. And along the way, if we see a shortcut where maybe we can make more money, but at the cost of not valuing those principles by doing something that's not integrous or something else, then there is a cost to be paid by that. That's who we become. That's us now. If you're a father, then that's your wife's husband now. That's who it is. And that's who your children's father is. Vice versa, if it's a woman. That's just a fact. And in our industry, if you're not thinking about that and course correcting all the time, it's a slippery slope. People don't wake up, and I'll just use our industry because it's simple and say, I'm going to be dishonest today. But let's say you're selling pest control door to door. And as you're selling pest control door to door, you don't make any sales in a day. And then near the end of the day, I sell Chase Hudson. And I go to your next door neighbor and I say, hey, I'm going to be out here servicing Chase Hudson, your neighbor Chase, tomorrow between 2 and 4. You are? And I find out, wow, they were way more interested when I said that. And I signed them up.
Yeah.
And I go, the next 2 doors, people aren't home. And I say, hey, I'm servicing your neighbor, Chase Hudson. How many doors can I go down to where that's not true?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And what if we just, then pretty soon we realize, well, gosh, it makes sense where I can say we're servicing your neighbors. So then you just show up in a new neighborhood and maybe you look up, to be honest and ethical, who the customers are who you have that you're servicing, and say, we're not, some of the customers we have out here are these people. We'd love to service you too. I think that's honest. If you know that there's people you're servicing the next day and you find out who those are, I'm servicing 12 people in this 3-street area tomorrow. If that's true, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But it's easier to cheat and just say, well, I know I'm servicing a lot of people, so why don't I just say I'm servicing 15 of your neighbors tomorrow? Yeah. Well, maybe you are, or maybe you aren't.
Right.
And maybe now you're referring to the 15 people that you and your associates are going to sell later that day, but they're not sold when you made the statement. Is that okay, or is it not okay?
Yeah.
I would say it's not okay. So why don't you just change the statement of saying, yesterday we signed up 52 people, and today looks like we anticipate signing up 52 more. If that's true, then I'm just saying, check yourself on a word by word level to make sure the words coming out of your mouth are true.
Yeah.
Because if not, over the course of just one summer, you will rationalize stuff that I think is dishonest, and then that will grow, and then that will grow, and then that will grow. Certainly, if I show up in a neighborhood and I say, I'm servicing the Johnsons tomorrow, the Hudsons tomorrow, and about 15 of your neighbors, and I actually just made up the word Johnson, and I made up the name Hudson, and I just made them up because I know that more likely it's going to make you interested. And to say, well, does it really matter? Does it really matter? I am going to be servicing 50. Yeah, it does matter. In my opinion, yes, it matters, because the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And it's at that point that you've planted the seeds of who you're going to grow into and who you're going to become. And so many young people say, I'm a church leader in embryo, or I'm a CEO in embryo, or I'm this in embryo. What are you actually in an embryo when you start living in an unprincipled way? Like, make no mistake, this is what a peach seed looks like, and this is what a watermelon seed looks like, and they don't look alike. And so with every thought and every action of how you're behaving, don't be confused into what you're becoming. Mm. And so that gets me to answer your question, which is know who you are. And then then what you can do is identify your roles. These are the habits you asked me about, on a monthly basis and a weekly basis, and say, these are the things, these are the roles that I have. For me, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a friend, I'm a business partner. Make that list and say, here are the things that I want to do this month and this week. And then I can schedule those things into my work schedule. And just because I schedule it doesn't mean I'm going to do it, because I have prioritized roles. Maybe my relationships are more important. So I'm going to call audibles according to the things that I value, not according to what my schedule says.
Makes sense.
And I think that, like that, in that order, those are the habits that I try to do, and I find very challenging, but I think that are worthwhile. Having your mission statement, beginning with the end in mind, know who you want to be, and then taking the time to plan your schedule according to your priorities, and making sure that you actually take time to identify your roles, and then schedule time and actual things to do that are consistent with helping you achieve each of those roles. Because if you're doing it on a micro schedule each day and each week and each month, then it's like I said, you know what seed you are and what you're, who and what you're becoming.
I love that, Jason. I think starting with the end in mind, establishing kind of your non-negotiables, and then building habits that support the vision that you have, where you want to be. I think life, and I've heard this from multiple people, is really all about bridging the gap between where you sit today and where your potential is, or where your life vision or life purpose sits, and just every day establishing little things that you can do to bridge that gap, become the end of life the person that you hope to set out to be. So,
and when you make a mistake, change, and do it decisively, of saying, if you're on the doors and you say something that's not true, fix it right then. Like literally, if I walk away from a door and I realize something's not right, go back to them and just say, hey, you know what I said? That wasn't right. It will meaningfully impact how you talk to people moving forward.
Yeah.
You won't do that again. And so any mistakes that we make that are inconsistent with who we want to be, like, pause, think it through, and then change it. rather than just say, if we're not going through that process, then over time, it's amazing. We will definitely become something that we did not intend to become.
Absolutely. That's great. Last question for you, Jason. What's one piece of advice you would give to somebody who wants to start a business or take an entrepreneurial turn in their career, but hasn't done it or is just looking for kind of that push? What's one piece of advice you'd give that individual?
Well, the first piece of advice would be to say not everybody should be an entrepreneur. And so first you should just ask yourself, is entrepreneurship really for me? So I see a lot of people that start venturing into entrepreneurship, and I think it's just not their cup of tea. Second, and this kind of builds on the first, if I took 15 people who started businesses and failed and brought them into a room and said, why did your business fail? When they answered those questions, you're going to go, oh my gosh, no wonder, poor person, bad luck. Well, that's not going to happen to me. You're going to talk about partners committing fraud, the economy going into a recession, death of close family members. I mean, just things where you'll go, well, that makes sense. Poor, bad luck. And say, thank you. Have those 15 people leave. Have 15 other people came in that started the exact same companies, but did it successfully. And say, what was the hardest part of starting your company? You're going to hear the same 15 stories. And this is what my advice to people who want to start businesses is this. You better have some thick skin. That remember, failure is your friend because it's honest. It will always give you honest feedback. When something doesn't work, you'll know it because it doesn't work. Then make changes. And that's the secret. Persistence is the secret to entrepreneurship. If you're committed to staying in the fight when most other people fail and walk away, eventually you will prevail. And so that is the advice I have for entrepreneurs. It's also the same advice I have to people who maybe you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. Is if you need more security, if you need assurance that it's going to work, if you need assurance you're not going to lose your money and that everything isn't going to collapse, then maybe you shouldn't do entrepreneurship. Go do accounting.
Sure.
And go work for one of the big 4 firms, right?
Yep.
But if you want to be an entrepreneur, just know that especially if you're starting a small business, there is no safety net. You are walking a tightrope or doing the trapeze with no net below you. And so you may not be a computer person, but if your computer software doesn't work and maybe you can't service accounts, all the people that were going to service accounts, they just go home and go, oh yeah, I get the day off. You're probably still paying everybody. The revenue isn't coming in. All your bills are there and nobody cares that you don't know software. You better figure it out or get somebody who can figure it out.
Yeah.
And so to would-be entrepreneurs, that's what I would say. I would say persistence. Persistence is the key. And so know that adversity is going to happen and embrace it. Embrace it and realize that that's part of the journey and it's part of what molds you into a unique and new and more powerful creature is your ability to receive, respond to, and overcome adversity.
That's amazing. I love it. Persistence, bouncing back after failure, and learning from your mistakes.
The question is then, can you do that in a principle-centered way?
Yeah.
Because it's through that process where you're going to be tempted in all kinds of ways to cheat. In my recruiting papers, in the recruiting things that I've made for salespeople, it says that the summer sales program is going to be foundational for the rest of your life. And it's my hope that foundation is going to be learned to valuing true principles like integrity, gratitude, hard work, loyalty, making, keeping commitments. I say we're also going to teach you some fundamental skills that are not true principles. Powers of persuasion skills, nonverbal communication skills, closing skills. That's powerful, right? Because now we're going to train people to pre-decide what we want people to think and feel, and then we're going to control how we communicate to make people think and feel that way. That's very, very powerful. So then there's one sentence that I put in there, and it says, it's my sincere hope that your powers of persuasion are always subject to your character of charity. Meaning, just because we can, we don't convince people to do things that are not in their best interest. Ever. That's whether great. It's the BYU and you're trying to tell people what job they should get, or Whether you're trying to sell someone pest control or you're trying to hire someone and you think that maybe they have a better opportunity, we don't convince people to do things that we don't think are in their best interest just because we can. That's where the rubber meets the road. And that's where integrity and virtue are gained or lost. And I would say, if you think of, regardless of what your faith is, of what the difference is between your God deity and your devil deity, probably most people would agree with that both are hardworking, smart, driven, and persuasive. The question is, what are they persuading people to do? And one of the main fundamental differences to me between good and evil is that we don't take advantage of other people just because we can.
Right.
And convince people to do things that we don't think are in their best interest because they're in our best interest. This may not be in your best interest, but gosh, it sure is good for my program or my company or my wallet or my pocketbook. When we treat people as a means to an end, then I think character goes out the window.
Yeah. So much good there, Jason. That's the way to live and the way to do business, principled living, and embedding that into the way you do your business negotiations. I think that's a great way to end. For everyone listening, go follow Jason, listen to his podcast. He's got an awesome show. And you're on LinkedIn, Instagram. So he's great. And thank you for being here, Jason. This has been awesome.
Thanks, Jason.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the discussion.
Thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
All right.